Welcome to another 5-minute video review and gameplay through Viking Raiders and Vikings as it was published in Europe. This is a Standard Games produced in the 90s board game, and this is the second video in the series, and we seem to be following the antics of a gang of 3 Vikings as they rove around northeastern England. And a Saxon family led by Grimm. I've been approached by Mr. Grimm, who's pointed out that my concern about his sons both being called Osric in the last video, in fact, Oriak and Osric. Also his mother Judith, his wife Brigda, and the young Hugh, who in the last instalment of course came to something of a sticky end. We're on the coast map. This is supplied as part of the UK printing of this game. It's a very interesting map. You can see here we have shingle, this grey stony textured hexes. Each one of those is 2 movement points. Here we have got scrub, the yellow with the green plants growing within, again each 2 movement points. Here we have a slope, again 2 movement points, and the higher edge of the slope is defined by this defining line. If a character is on the lower side of the slope, they can gain cover. And perhaps most importantly, these brown hexes are rocks. They require 3 movement points, and they are rocks of the type that we used to play on as children and try not to slide off. They're large, they're slippery. They count as a terrain disadvantage if one is caught on them, and they block line of sight. And finally, they're inaccessible from the seaside where the waves are crashing in on them. You'll see in the top left of the map the lookout post. You'll see the clever use of graphics. It's possible to easily understand that a character would move in through the door, up the steps, and then take an arrow slit position here, here, or here. A multi-level building defined on a 2-dimensional map, and beautifully clear. So without further ado, we'll move to Ragnar the Berserker here at the front of this raiding party. We see he's got a combat strength of 13 in black, a defense strength of 9 in red, and a movement of only 5. Ragnar moves forward 2 movement points onto the scrub, and then another 2 movement points onto the slope. Were he to move another hex further on, he'd be moving into a scrub hex here, or a rock hex here. So that's 3 movement points for rocks, 2 for scrub. He wouldn't have enough movement points to go further. Lodin cleverly takes up a position, 2 points to there, and then 3 points to there. 5 movement points in total of his 6. He's now in an advantageous position to use his bow. Bjorn finally, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bjorn has only 6 movement points, 3 more would be required to move on to those rocks, so he can go no further. So now we come to the Saxon turn. As Grimm's combat instincts waken, he realises that the Vikings are once more upon them. And in the dusk, he moves out from the house. You'll see that the door to the house is here, and you'll see an arrow slit or a window here and here. Grimm, the bold leader of the house, moves 1, 2, and realising that a Viking bowman is up on the rocks outside the house looking down on him, he moves 3, 4, 5, moving him into contact with Lodin and ready for combat. Lodin, as I've said, is on the slippery rocks. This counts as a terrain disadvantage, much to Grimm's glee, and he calls his son Osiak. 1, 2, 3. And between the 2 of them, they'll be able to take the fight to the Vikings. Osric, down at the bottom here, moves only 1 hex. He's now in the window, just there, that brown section of wall, and that gives him a good angle of fire on the Vikings as they move forward next turn, and gives him a line of sight directly onto the Berserker. Hugh, with a movement of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, Judith will remain there and Brigda can move into the doorway ready to move where necessary. So we now come to combat. Oziak and Grim with total combat strength of 12 versus Loddon with a defence of only 5 provides us with a 2-to-1 attack on this column here. Now Loddon is on disadvantaging terrain, the rocks. It moves the column 1 up to the 3-to-1. This game is played on a d10 and we're looking for low numbers. I don't know if you can quite see that. I'll roll that again. Not having much luck with the dice. 1. Excellent. So that's a very good roll. On the 3-to-1 column that produces an F, and if we come down here you'll see that that produces the result Defender Wounded. We reduce Loddon's counter, and this gives me an advantage and a moment to describe the clever graphics of these counters. A wounded man or woman is depicted with a different counter, showing the wounded depiction of the individual and showing reduced combat strength, defence strength and movement. A good start for the Saxons. The Vikings now, in retribution, move to finish the battle. Ragnar here, the Berserker, is 1, 2, 3, 4. His movement being 5 means he's within a move distance of the enemy. So he can roll to see if he's able to go berserk, needing an 8 or more. Unfortunately, a 4 is not good enough, so he can only move in a conventional way. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this allows Bjorn, much to his disgust, to move in onto the rocks. Not a good position for the Vikings, but nowhere else to go. So Ragnar now, 13 against Hugh at 4. Attack of 13, defence of 4 is a 3-to-1 attack. Would be this column here, looking for a low number. 7 produces a B, which is Attacker Wounded. This is an awful outcome as Hugh turns round and proves himself in fact a quiet hero. Ragnar now staggers backwards wounded. We replace his counter with this counter, which shows his wounded depiction and his wounded strength. Bjorn, to his horror, realises things are going wrong, lunges at Oziak. We'll see that Bjorn has got an attack of 13 and Oziak has got a defence of 5. That's a 2-to-1 attack, but with a terrain disadvantage moves down to a 1-to-1 attack. Again, those rocks getting in the way of good combat. And we're looking for a low number. It's not going to be the day for the Vikings. High number of 10 produces no result. And finally, Loddon, with his wounded side showing an attack strength of only 2, attacking against Grim's defence of 8 is a 1-to-4 attack. You can't get any worse than that. The terrain disadvantage makes no difference. A good result, a C. Attacker retreat 1 hex, probably something he's quite happy with. I should think the Vikings will soon be making a move back to the boats.